If you are thinking about buying a property in Brazil, there is something you need to understand from the beginning. Find the property is actually the easy part. Yes. The important part is make sure that the person selling it can legally sell it, that the property has no serious legal problems, that your contract protects you, and finally, the property is actually registered in your name. Because in Brazil, paying for a property and receive the key does not necessarily means that you are legally owned. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the entire process, step by step, from preparing your document to become the registered owner of the property. So, my name is Yuri, I'm a Brazilian lawyer, and we assist foreigners clients with legal matters in Brazil, included real estate transactions. And one thing I noticed in that buying property here is not necessarily difficulty, but the process is probably different from the process you are familiar with in your own country. That's why today I want to make it simple, okay? So let's start. I'm going to divide the purchase into 7 practical steps. And stay with me until the registration step, because this is one of the most important difference between the Brazilian system, Brazilian tax system or Brazilian legal system, and what many foreigners buyers expect. But the end of the video, you will understand what needs to happen before you transfer the money, what the document you should be review, what happened at the closing, and when the property actually becomes yours. Let's start. Step 1, understand what you are buying. So the first step is very simple. Why? Because it's define exactly what type of property you want to buy. Okay? Are you buying an apartment in São Paulo, a vacation home in Rio, Fortaleza, a property for rental income? So a house where you are planning to spend part of the year. But there can be additional restriction when you are talking about certain rural property or properties located in specific border areas. So normally the rule is possible, but have some restrictions, okay? So before making an offer, we first need to understand exactly what type of property you are dealing with. Okay. For a regular apartment or urban house, the process is usually much more straightforward. You also need to decide how you are going to acquire it. For example, are you buying personally? Are you buying jointly with your spouse? Are you buying using a company, using your foreign company? For most people, buying one residential property, the structure can be relatively simple. It's simple. But this is something worth deciding before preparing the contract. Okay? So, step 2, get your CPF or CNPG and prepare your document. So, the second step is getting your Brazilian CPF. So, CPF, it's mean in Portuguese, Cadastro de Pessoas Físicas. So, you can think that is a Brazilian taxpayer identification number. Okay, but a foreigner does not need to become a Brazilian citizen or a permanent resident simply that you have a CPF. No, Doesn't mean that if you have a CPF, you consider as tax resident. No. If you want to buy Brazilian property in Brazil, you need a CPF if you are individual. So CPF is a tax number for individuals, and a CNPJ is a tax number for companies. Okay? And the CPF is necessary to have it, for example, to buy a real estate, to open a bank account, to buy a car, you need to have a CPF. But you should also prepare your identification document, okay? And depends on your situation, document related with your status, the marital status. This is where the foreigners need to be careful with paperwork from abroad. A document that is valid in United States, Canada, Europe, or another country is not automatically ready to be used in Brazil. Okay? Depend on the notary, it's necessary to do what? Apostille. This is necessary to do legalization. It's necessary to do the translation of these documents. And if you are not going to be physically in Brazil, present here, you may need a power of attorney to sign and buy this real estate. Of course, it's possible to buy distance, okay? Because in Brazil, you have a system that is possible to do that, and it's possible to buy by distance using the notary system. Okay, it's completely a legal procedure. But if you want to buy using a power of attorney to show and appoint someone, it's necessary to do exactly what the notary asks you, okay, to fill this power of attorney. This is something you want to organize early, not 2 or 3 days before the closing, okay? So step 3, check the property matrícula. Now we get into the legal side of the property itself, okay? The legal part. One of the most important documents, in my point of view, is the Brazilian real estate transaction, and the name is called in Brazil matrícula. Matrícula is the official registration record of the property maintained by the competent real estate registry office. So this document, matrícula, tells us things such as who are really the owner, who is the registered owner, who is the really owner, who did the person acquire the property, are there mortgage or other registered encumbrance, are there restrictions recorded against the property, does the legal description match with the actually buying. It's important to know, because someone can say, I'm the owner, but his name is not in that matrícula. So I think it's the most important document that you need to know, need to have, is the matrícula. So this is important because you should never determine ownership simply by looking at who is living in the property. No, who is paying the bills or who presents themselves as the owner. It's necessary to read and find that someone that trying to say to you that the owner is really writing there. It's the name of someone is writing on the property register in the matrícula. Okay, we want to see who the Brazilian real estate registry says on the property. Okay, if I'm review a transaction for a client, the matrícula is the most and the first document that I want to see. Yeah, And this is also the moment to verify wherever the physical property is consistent with a legal registration. For example, imagine someone add another room, okay, expand the house or made significant construction changes. So the property you are visit and the property described in the officer record should make sense together, okay? You need to see if this add the total surface is writing there in the matrícula. Step 4, do the legal diligence. This is probably the most important legal step before making the final payment. It's called due diligence, okay? And the due diligence is not simply checking whether the apartment looks good. No. We are investigating, you are investigating the legal situation of both property and the seller. You need to see both and to verify both legal conditions of the property, but also the owner. So, on the property side, we may investigate things such as ownership, mortgage and lines, condominium debts, municipal taxes, registry restrictions, legal procedures involving the property, occupancy, construction and register, but you may also need to investigate the seller. Yes, the seller. And the foreigner client something asked me, why do I need to investigate the seller if I'm buying the property? It's a normal, it's natural question, okay? But because certain legal or financial problems involving the seller can potentially affect the transaction. Yes, it's possible. So the analysis depends on the circumstance, but we may review court certificate, the tax information, marital status, corporate information when a company is involved in other relevant record. This does not mean that finding a lawsuit automatically means you cannot buy the property. No, it's necessary. That means that we understand the situation before you commit your money. So the purpose of the due diligence, we want the client to understand what they are buying, who they are buying, and from and what legal risk exists before the transactions move forward. Step 5, negotiate the purchase agreement. Once the property, okay, and the seller have been reviewed, we move to the contract, of course. Depends on the transactions, you may see documents such as purchase proposal, reservation agreement, or a promessa de compra e venda, which is essentially a promise or preliminary agreement to purchase and sell the property. These documents deserve much more attention than may buyers give it. Why? Because once you sign it, and especially once you pay the deposit money in the beginning, the part of money, you may already have important legal obligations. The agreement should clearly establish things such as some example, okay? Of course, the purchase price, the payment schedule, the deposit, closing conditions, document the seller must provide, possession of the property, existing tenant, if any, it's important to know, tax expenses, deadlines, penalties, and what happens if the transaction cannot be completed. So, one practical point for foreign buyers, okay? Practical point. If someone gives you an English transaction of the agreement, it's helpful, of course. But you need to know which version is legally legally binding. In most transactions in Brazil, the Portuguese is the language that matters, okay? So do you not sign a contract simply because someone summarized you for this in English, okay? You need to understand what actually agreement says. And of course, it's necessary to do, in the end, a purchase agreement. You do that before the notary in Brazil. So the name is called in Brazil, purchase agreement is named Escritura Pública de Compra e Venda. Step 6, the money, tax, and closing. Now you get the financial side, okay? If money is outside Brazil, plans to transfer in advance, or you can, for example, open a bank account for foreigners, okay? It's possible to have this bank account in Brazil, okay? Or you have a possibility to open a traditional bank account. It's necessary, of course, you have some visa in Brazil to have the traditional bank account. So it's important to think when the deal it's almost done, you need to think about the transfer tax, IOF, okay, notary expenses, registration costs, professional fees, the lawyer fees, okay, the translation and apostille and foreign document expenses, okay? About the tax, one tax that you need to pay is ETBA, okay? It's a Brazilian municipal real estate transfer tax. So the rules and the rates depends on where the real estate is located because it's a municipal tax, okay? After the necessary requirements are met in many transactions, move to public deed, okay? As I said, it's necessary to sign the public deed, Escritura Pública de Compra e Venda. So this deed is normally handled through a Brazilian notary office, tabelionato de notas, okay? But here is something extremely important. Sign the deed is still not the last step. So, step 7, register the property in your name. This is a step I really want foreign buyers to remember, okay? It's necessary to remember. It's not for something that foreigners must know. Even for Brazilians, it's important to know. So, imagine the situation. You sign the document, you transfer the purchase price, the seller gives you the key. You enter in the apartment. You may feel like the transaction is finished. But from a real estate law perspective, B still need to complete the registration. Even you sign the deed, okay? So the acquisition document need to go to the competent notary, cartório de notas, and the transfer needs to be registered in the property matrícula. So your name must be written in this matrícula. You are only owner, legal owner, if your name is in this matrícula, right on this matrícula, okay? So after registration, I want to see an update matrícula showing that you are the owner, okay? This is when we can look at the official record and confirm that the transfer has actually been completed. Of course, key are important, payment are important, the deed is important, but the registration is what complete the transfer of ownership in the real estate registry. Okay, so the last point is practical example, okay? Let me give you a very simple example. Imagine you are from the United States, okay? And you find an apartment in Florianopolis for investment. You like apartment and negotiate the price. What is the next step? First, we confirm that you have a CPF or you need to get it. Then when you obtain and review your property registration, we investigate the property and the seller as doing a due diligence. We review and prepare a purchase agreement. We organize the payment structure and closing requirement. The applicable tax is paid, ITBI is paid. The appropriate transfer document is signed, and when you send the transaction for registration. And then we send the transaction for registration. After that, we obtain the update matrícula showing you are the owner, okay? That's the entire process in a simplified version. And when those stages are handled in the correct order, buying real estate in Brazil becomes much easier to manage. I'm curious about something. If you are watching this video because you are actually considering buying a property, which city are you looking at? São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Florianópolis, Fortaleza, and the northeast of Brazil? Let me see. Brasilia, maybe? If this video is useful, okay, subscribe and send us a message. See you in the next video.